Hi guys, Geechu64 here, and today I want to share with you guys my personal top 10 TV shows of the year to close out 2024. Happy New Year. I think by the time this video goes up, we will be in 2025. I used to do a top 10 movies of the year a long time ago, and instead of doing that, I wanted to do a top 10 TV shows of the year. I've seen a lot of really good TV shows this year, and I kind of want to focus on those as opposed to the movies that I saw. So I thought this would be a fun list to do and share with you guys, and hopefully you find something here that you guys might be interested in checking out. And if there's something not on this list that is your favorite, always comment and let me know. It'll introduce me to some new stuff. With all that said, let's go ahead and jump into the video. Real quick, before we jump into the countdown, I want to say that there are three TV shows in particular that are on my watch list that I haven't actually finished watching or seen this year, but are ones that I want to see as soon as I can. One of those is Superman and Lois Season 4, which is the final season of the show. I actually have really liked Superman and Lois. It's sad that it got canceled, but with that being canceled, I'm going to guess that there's going to be a complete series coming out to Blu-ray. And that's when I'll pick it up, and that's when I'll watch it. You can watch it on the CW, but it's got ads. I'd rather not watch it with the commercials, and it hasn't been added to Max yet. So I haven't seen it, even though it did release here this year. So that one is on my watch list. Another one, Reacher Season 2. A lot of people have said that it's pretty good. I really liked Season 1. Most of the people have said that it's not as good as Season 1, but it's definitely worth a watch, and I do want to check it out eventually, but I haven't got around to it yet. And the final thing that I really wanted to check out before the end of the year was Shogun. A lot of people have said Shogun is great. A lot of really good reviews. I would love to check it out. I don't have Disney Plus. I don't have Hulu. So I haven't got around to seeing it. I wish they would release it physically. I'm going to get around to watching this at some point, but I haven't seen it yet. I have no doubt that thing would be on my list if I'd actually seen it. So those are three things I wanted to mention that are on my watch list that I wish I had gotten to before the end of the year, but I just didn't. And before we start with number 10, I do want to give the honorable mentions. As I said, I saw a lot of really good TV shows this year, so I want to make sure that I give them a little bit of love here. So Silo Season 2, I have liked. It's not been as good as Season 1. That one is on Apple. That one is still airing. It still has a few episodes to go, so we'll see. Maybe it'll finish strong, and it would be on this list otherwise, but you know, considering it hasn't finished and I haven't liked it as much as the first season, it didn't make it into my top 10. Another one, Legend of Vox Machina Season 3. I do enjoy Legend of Vox Machina. I used to have a D&D group. We just started a new D&D group, and yeah, I know, wow, I played D&D.
That's shocking.
So I appreciate watching this show on that level. Also, Tulsa King Season 2 I saw. I don't like it as much as some of Taylor Sheridan's other shows. I don't think the characters or the pacing and the story structure is as good as some of his other stuff. However, Sylvester Stallone is great in the role, and he really carries the show. And I did like it, but it didn't crack my top 10. Another one, Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5 came out, and I'm a big Star Trek fan. I don't really like New Trek. But I do like Star Trek Lower Decks because it's just kind of a fun animated comedy show for Star Trek fans. And I like it on that level. I don't really consider it canon or anything like that, but I think it's fun and I do enjoy it. I've watched all 5 seasons, so obviously I enjoy it. And The Gentleman, which was another great show. This one I really wanted to fit it into my top 10, but the ending of the last few episodes of the show weren't as strong as the first few episodes of the show, kind of brought it out of my top 10, but very good stylistic stuff from Guy Ritchie. It takes place in the same world as the Gentleman movie, and it's definitely a recommend if you have not seen the Gentleman and you like Guy Ritchie stuff especially, although most likely if that's the case, you've already seen it. And we've also got Fallout Season 1. I think Fallout Season 1 was a lot of fun. I really liked it up until the ending. I did not really like the last episode. It drug it down for me. That's kind of what happened with a few of these TV shows where I was into them and then the final episode kind of tapered off. We obviously follow 3 characters in that show. I think 2 of those characters are very strong with the Ghoul and Lucy. However, the Maximus, I didn't really care for the character that much. I don't know if he was miscast in the role or if it's the way the character's written. I didn't really care for him, so that kind of drug the show down a little bit for me too. But I did like the world, and no, I did not play the video game, so I'm a newbie going into the show. However, I do know what the video game is. Like I knew the premise of the video game, so Anyway, so that was one that just missed my top 10. And then this one came in at number 11, which is My Hero Academia Season 7. Yes, I'm not a huge anime fan, but I do like My Hero Academia. I was surprised that this one kind of got pushed out of the top 10. I think it's because the season just kind of ended. It didn't have a climax or anything. It just was done and over with. A lot of cool action and stuff this season, but it seemed simultaneously rushed and stretched out, which I don't know how you do that. But anyway, I did like season 7, but not as good as some of the earlier seasons of that show. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into number 10. Coming in number 10, we've got Masters of the Air, which was on Apple Plus. While Band of Brothers focused on the Army and the Pacific focused on Marines, Masters of the Air, as you might guess, focuses on the Army Air Corps, which would later be called the Air Force. So I was in the Air Force. I was familiar with a lot of the story being told here, so I'm predisposed to enjoying it. I was pretty hyped when I found out that they were doing an Air Force version of the Band of Brothers in the Pacific. I think a lot of it really worked well. Some of the pacing a little bit in the last couple episodes kind of fell off. I feel like that's already becoming a theme here where I say the final couple episodes, the pacing went off. They try and introduce the Tuskegee Airmen and they kind of feel shoehorned into the story. I feel like they should have interlaced them within the story so they didn't feel so shoehorned at the end. Because Tuskegee Airmen are great. I've actually met a couple of the Tuskegee Airmen, and it's a really good story. I do like it. I don't think it's as good as Band of Brothers. I would put it on par with the Pacific. It just covers the different elements and the different challenges that each of the branches, faced in the different theaters within World War II. So I do recommend Masters of the Air, especially if you like Band of Brothers in the Pacific. It gives you another look at that. It does star Austin Butler, and it's a good show. Obviously, it's coming in number 10 on my list. Coming in at number 9 is Squid Game 2, which was on Netflix. So this is obviously the follow-up to 2021's massive hit series from South Korea. We finally got season 2 just a few days ago. I actually sat down and pretty much binged it in one day. It did keep me invested, but I don't think it was as good as season 1. It obviously follows a little bit of the cliffhanger we got from season 1 where player 456 decides to stay in South Korea and apparently try and find the island and stop what's going on. And I think the first few episodes, I was pretty interested because I was seeing where it was going to go. Some people thought that it was paced kind of slow, and I agree with that to a certain extent, but I actually like the idea of taking it in a direction where he's trying to find this place and shut it down. And then once he gets in the Squid Game, I thought a lot of those elements actually did work pretty well because you're seeing him from within, trying to stop all this stuff from happening, trying to convince these people. You get new games. Obviously, that was a good twist to show off, well, these people don't trust him because the games he said were coming up weren't. And I really liked a lot of the elements with the X's and O's where they're voting to leave and kind of the tribalism that's showcased there. A lot of stuff does really work in this season. The detriment is really the fact that it doesn't really have an ending. It's like half of season 2, and then we're going to get the rest of season 2, next year. They were filmed back to back, and you can tell that because it does kind of end abruptly. There's a lot of characters that are introduced in this season, and I think that slows down a lot of the pacing. Some of them aren't as interesting as other ones, and I feel like if you took some of them out, they could have told this the complete story probably within one season. So that was really the thing that I didn't like as much, but I really liked player 001 coming into the mix, just like how 001 was an important character in season 1. The new 001 is an important character in season 2. I do like a lot of it, but it didn't hit on the same level as the first season for me, but it is really good. Coming in number 9. Coming in number 8 is House of the Dragon season 2, which was on HBO or Max. When the first season came out of House of the Dragon, I had very little hope for the series, but I really liked it. Obviously I was a massive hater of Game of Thrones final season, so I really didn't care about the series anymore, but I figured I'd give House of the Dragon a shot because new creatives were in charge. So it's like, all right, well, let's give these guys a chance anyway. And I'm happy I did. Obviously it's solid. I bought it on 4K. I think the first season of House of the Dragon is really solid. But in regard to season 2, it's not as good as season 1, unfortunately. It feels very stretched out. The pacing's all over the place. Overall, the pacing of season 2 kind of reminds me of the Hobbit trilogy, where it's like, I think that there's a good movie within the Hobbit trilogy, But it's just, since it's so stretched out, it's like I don't. This was just a bad decision to stretch out this stuff, because it just feels like what it is, which is stretching it out for content. The show was meant to be 3 seasons, and because of the success of the first season, they decided to turn it into 4, and you feel that stretching out of the story within this season, unfortunately. Some of the character choices I was kind of iffy on. Some of the character moments were great. Now, this season does have some really solid episodes, with episode 4 and episode 7, arguably as good, if not better, than anything in season 1. Maybe episode 4, I would say, maybe the best episode of the show, potentially. So there are some really good moments, some really good episodes within season 2. It is really solid. I did enjoy it, even though I just wish it was paced a little bit better. But I'm okay putting it at number 8. This would have ranked higher if it didn't have all the pacing issues. Coming in at number 7 is Landman, which is on Paramount Plus. Now, I don't know if it's cheating to put this one on the list, considering it's not finished yet. It has a couple episodes left, I think 2. I think it has 2 to 3 episodes left. And they're going to finish it up in 2025, but I'm going to go and put it on here anyway. Who knows? Maybe the final episodes are terrible, and this would have dropped off the list based on a terrible ending. It wouldn't be the first time that's happened with TV shows, obviously, but I'll base it on what I've seen so far, and this is the 8th show from Taylor Sheridan, who's done so many shows over the last couple of years. It's crazy. As I said, this is his 8th show, and this one focuses on an oil company in West Texas. It stars Billy Bob Thornton as Tommy, the landman, and he knocks it out of the park as this role. I think he does a really good job. We've also got Ellie Larder as his ex-wife, John Hamm as the owner of the company, and his wife's played by Demi Moore, who we haven't seen a whole lot of, but I'm assuming maybe she's going to come into play at a later point, because it's Demi Moore. I don't know why she's in such a small role, but I find the atmosphere and the setting of the show very interesting. It definitely keeps me engaged. I would kind of describe it as like Yellowstone meets a little bit of Friday Night Lights or something like that. The show's carried a lot by Tommy's dysfunctional family drama, but I was actually interested in the characters, so that did work. It's a little bit soap opera-y at times, but again, I kind of like the characters, so that invested me a little bit more. This show also has one of the best openings of a TV show that I've seen in a while. Really solid. It really got me hooked right from the get-go. Hopefully this show actually plays out and we actually get a better ending than what we got with Yellowstone, because I did not like the ending of Yellowstone, which did end this year as well. But only time will tell. We'll see how it goes. Coming in number 6 is Cobra Kai Season 6, which is on Netflix. The final 5 episodes of the show air next year, capping off a surprisingly solid show that I've enjoyed a lot. I've pretty much liked all of Cobra Kai. Yes, there's certain elements that get reused. Yes, there's some cheese, obviously, in a lot of this. But you know what? I got YouTube Red back in the day just to watch Cobra Kai, because everybody was saying Cobra Kai was good. I'm talking about YouTube Red before Netflix had Cobra Kai. I got it just to watch this. And I liked it a lot. I think Johnny Lawrence really carried those earlier seasons. They did a good job of setting up newer characters, but Johnny Lawrence is the heart of the show, in my opinion. They have tried to push Daniel into more of the forefront. I do like Daniel as well, but I don't think he's as interesting as Johnny Lawrence's character is. Seeing him grow a lot throughout the show, I think, is the heart of the franchise, in my opinion. And, he's kind of been pushed a little bit to the back, and they're rehashing older things with him, with Daniel and stuff. So season 6 kind of feels like an epilogue to the story, because it feels like the main story basically got wrapped up in season 5. And that's how I felt with the first part. The way they've released season 6 is in parts. So they released part 1 a couple months ago. They just released part 2 in December. And then part 3 is supposed to release in January, I believe, or might be February, regardless. I don't know how this 3-part rollout, I think, would work in certain scenarios. I don't know if it's working for me necessarily, because part 1 felt very, very slow. It felt kind of a waste of time, in my opinion. It felt very stretched out. The part 2 finally felt like stuff was actually happening. So I really liked part 2 a lot more than part 1. And who knows what part 3 has in store. If part 3 is really solid, this would probably move up way on the list. If part 3 stinks and has a terrible ending, it would move off the list. I don't know. I can only judge it by where it's at right now. But anyway, I really like Cobra Kai. I think Silver's a great villain. I like John Kreese as well, but I think Silver's just over the top. In season 4 and 5, when they brought him in, I thought it was great. I like the new characters. I think Cobra Kai is a lesson in how to introduce new characters while honoring the original characters. A lot of stuff I really like about Cobra Kai. So anyway, Cobra Kai season 6, part 1 and 2 are going to put at number 6. Coming in at number 5 is Frieren Beyond Journey's End, which is on Crunchyroll. I actually checked this out on a recommend from my D&D group that I mentioned earlier. I do play D&D. One of them recommended this show. I was pleasantly surprised. I actually really liked the idea of the show where you have this elf who has outlived her initial adventuring party, and she's finding a new journey to embark on after most of her old party has, passed away, moved on. It's been 100 years, I think, since then. So, her party's she's outlived her party. And so now she kind of formed a new one, and she's learning new things with them. The pacing is okay. It has a leisurely pace. I find a lot of it relaxing, to be honest. I also think it's interesting in the way that it explores the characters, specifically Frieren, obviously the elf. And you can see a lot of parallels between this world and D&D. Obviously, it's not technically D&D. But when I was watching this, I got like vibes of The Last Airbender and Dragon Ball Z. Now, I don't mean that it's like Dragon Ball Z or it's like The Last Airbender. I just mean when I was watching it, I felt like I was watching something that was going to stick with me like Dragon Ball Z and The Last Airbender did. And it has. I've thought about it quite a bit over the last few months, and I kind of want to go back and see it. They did announce a Blu-ray release for it, but it's only in part 1, and they're charging like $45 for it. So anime, man, they really scalp you on the physical media for anime. So I don't know if I'm going to pick it up or not. But regardless, the show was really solid. I was very surprised by it, and it's coming in number 5. Coming in number 4 is For All Mankind Season 4, which is on Apple Plus. For those that don't know, For All Mankind is an alternate history show where the Soviets beat the US to the moon and the space race never ended. Now, I do have the first season on Blu-ray. Now, this is the only season that they've released here in the States. Now, they've had overseas releases of, I believe, all 4 seasons. I think that's because it might be because Apple's not available overseas. I don't really know, but regardless, in the North America, this is the only one that they've released, and thankfully they have. Anytime they release streaming service, exclusive shows on physical media, I think is a great thing. So, but I like, I like NASA stuff, and I like alternate history stuff. This fits the bill for me. It is headed up by showrunner Ronald D. Moore, who did Star Trek DS9 and Voyager, and then he showran Battlestar Galactica, which is a great show as well. He has a good sci-fi pedigree. I think he's doing a really good job with this show, and they're getting seasons out pretty fast, especially considering the amount of special effects that they put into the show. Like, you pretty much only have to wait like 2 years or a year and a half in between seasons, which is kind of unheard of nowadays, because now it's like, oh, well, Stranger Things, we've got 1 season in the last 5 years, so that's kind of crazy to think about. Now, there's been 4 seasons. Each season focuses on a different decade in the space race, where it starts off in the 70s, and then season 2 moves into the 80s, season 3 into the 90s, and then season 4 into 2000s. And each season really utilizes those time jumps to take the characters that we know in new directions and showcase the changing history and technology as a result of the space race continuing. So as the show goes on, you're getting further and further separation from our timeline, which is interesting to see. They even do like little specials where they show a lot of the differences and things like that. I think they do a really good job. Some people may not really like its slower pace, but I really like the show. I think it's really good. And while season 4, I would say, is probably the weakest of the 4, I still like it, and I would buy it if they actually put it out. Regardless, I'm still interested in checking out season 5, which is coming out soon. And there's also a spin-off series of the show coming out soon. So if you're interested in seeing an alternate history space race that continues on for seasons, this is the show for you. Coming number 3 is The Penguin, which is on HBO or Max. And I got to say, I was lukewarm on the Batman movie. I thought it was just okay. Really, the third act, I think, fell apart, and I didn't like the Riddler at all. Like Paul Dano's great, but I did not like his version of the Riddler. I think that had to do with the writing more so than the actor, because the actor is great. But I liked other elements of the movie. It was just it was a mixed bag for me. So it's not like I was looking forward to a Penguin TV show. But good word of mouth about the Penguin as it was coming out week to week. And yes, I am for week to week model over binge model personally, because it gives time to actually build an audience. When you dump everything at one time, there are a few shows that will benefit from that, but I think for the most part, week-to-week releases is the way to go, because without that, I don't know if the Penguin would have gotten the audience that it would have if they just dumped all the episodes at one time. Now, the pacing for the first few episodes of the show was kind of slow, but it didn't really bother me much because the characters kept me interested. The characters in the show are great. They're written well and performed amazingly well. Clancy Brown is great as always. I didn't realize he was in this. Christina Milioti as Sophia Falcone, who I mostly know from How I Met Your Mother and that one Black Mirror episode. Victor as Oz's apprentice, the actor who plays him, I think he's the heart of the show. He's the one that he's needed for this show, because a lot of these characters are obviously evil. They're unapologetically bad people and evil people. Now, Colin Farrell as the Penguin, great. The fact that I forgot it was Colin Farrell most of the time. He completely gets lost in the role. This easily could have just been Eddie Murphy in a fat suit or something like that, but I think he does an amazing job. He should win awards. I don't put any stock in awards, but he should win awards. Like I said, this show is really the story of real villains. They aren't really sold as sympathetic or relatable. There's little moments here where they try and kind of sprinkle that in, but you know full well that, these people are not good people. And then those nice moments, you realize as the show goes on, those nice moments you thought they were putting in to humanize the characters are really just manipulation. It's all just to manipulate things to achieve something. I thought the ending of the show was great, which sits in contrast to some of the other shows I've talked about where the ending has petered off or not been as good. The ending, I thought, finished strong for the Penguin. I thought it was a great show. It's really a great character piece on an unapologetically evil character, which we don't get a whole lot of. So, yeah, the Penguin at number 3. I almost moved this one up, but and objectively, maybe it should be moved up. I don't know, but I'm putting it based on what I enjoyed the most as well, not what I think is objectively better. So with that said, let's go and move on to number 2. Coming in number 2 is X-Men 97, which is on Disney+. I love the X-Men animated series. I grew up watching X-Men, the animated series on Fox Kids. It's what got me into comic books. It's what got me into superheroes. I owe a lot to X-Men. X-Men's still my favorite superhero team. Seeing X-Men 97, X-Men in the 90s was probably peak X-Men, to be honest. So seeing a revival of that series, I figured it was going to be terrible, to be honest. Look at everything else we've gotten over the last, 10 years where we've seen, sequels and reboots and all this stuff. And for the most part, they're all worse than the original material. Sometimes they ruin the original material depending on how you look at it. But X-Men 97 was great. It easily could have been a cash grab, like a lot of what Disney has done and put out. In my opinion, I think a lot of what they do is cash grab these days. But instead, this actually seemed like it was well written. They took some time to actually come up with where they wanted to take the story and the characters, and whoever made it was a fan of the original X-Men 90s cartoon, the X-Men 90s series. You feel that when you're watching it. You're like, oh, well, they could have just done this with the characters and thrown out all this and done whatever. No, I feel like they actually did care about the X-Men series. The show felt like a continuation of the 90s X-Men in a way I did not really expect. The characters, the designs, the story adaptation feel like a natural progression from where we left off in season 5. I think it maintained the tone of the original series, but has those darker elements, and is elevated in the fact that it's on a streaming service. So there's certain things that it's okay, well, there's blood here and there's certain language here or certain things here that there's no way you would get away with that in the original 90s series. but it still feels like it's grounded in the same world as what we saw in that original series. Now, there are a few things I would obviously change from this, as it's kind of the case with almost anything you watch. There's always things that you have preferences or some things on with stories or characters that you would do differently. But I do think the last couple episodes, while there's a lot of action in them and a lot of conclusion, bombastic stuff in the last few episodes, some of that I don't think worked all that well in regards to the way the story was playing out. Some of the decisions with some of the characters and things I would probably change. Again, I won't get into the particulars, but I don't really think that took too much away from it. I still enjoyed the last few episodes, even though there were some things I had some issues with. I do think it started off better than it ended. But that's just my opinion. Overall, this show reminded me of why I loved the X-Men, why I loved the 90s X-Men in particular, and it transported me back to the 90s in a way that few shows could do or probably ever will do. And it pushed it way up on my list because, yeah, I mean, the feeling of being transported back to the 90s as a kid is not easy to capture. So X-Men 97 had to be way up on my list because of that alone. Coming in number 1 is Dark Matter, which is on Apple Plus.
What?
You may be asking, what is this? I've never even heard of this. Well, a lot of people didn't hear about it, but it's a great show, right? Obviously, I think it is because it made it into my number 1 spot here for 2024. What Dark Matter is it's a multiverse story about a physicist who's kidnapped from his universe and is stranded in a separate universe. The kidnapper just so happens to be an alternate reality version of himself who wants his life. So he basically forces the other guy by kidnapping him and stranding him in the alternate universe. And that guy has to try and figure out a way to get back to his family. And this is a multiverse story done right. A lot of multiverse stories, I think, are done terribly. I won't go on a huge tangent about it other than to say why people are sick of the multiverse stories is because people are not telling multiverse stories correctly. What's the correct way to tell it? Well, you have to have stakes and you have to care about the characters. If I can't care about the characters, if you're killing them off willy-nilly, right? If Johnny dies, well, they're just going to grab another Johnny from another multiverse, and then who cares because Johnny 1's dead. There's always another Johnny I can just replace him with, right? You have to put value on human life, and in order to have stakes within the multiverse, and I think this story does it pretty well. You really do have to focus on the characters' humanity, right? That's what's going to ground the story and give it stakes. I was invested in what was going to happen to this one alternate version of this character, even though there's lots of alternate versions of other characters we see throughout. And I know it can be difficult to do in a multiverse story, but it can be done. It was done here, in my opinion. I think the types of worlds they show in that they go to and that they showcase in this show are pretty interesting. They're shown as obstacles. Are they as interesting as you might like? Maybe not. But the fact that the actual places that they end up going, it's all an obstacle. Now, I love the way that they do the multiverse travel. It gave me Sliders vibes. If you guys remember Sliders back in the day, I guess I would describe Dark Matter as with a little bit of R-rated Sliders vibes, I guess. Sliders, I think, was a great show, but it was limited to, what it could do at the time. I think Dark Matter does a lot with what it has to work with. The ending, the last couple episodes are really good, as opposed to, again, some of the other things I talked about here. The ending, I think, finishes strong. And I find myself thinking about this show from time to time, even months after watching it. And I want to go back and watch it again. And I think that's the sign of a good show. So when I was making this list, I was like, I have to put Dark Matter in number 1. Like, I want to go back and watch that. I want to go back and watch that more than any of the other things on my list. So that has to put it in number 1, I think. And it's one that not a lot of people, know about. So if I'm able to showcase it here and give people a chance to maybe check it out. I know not too many people have Apple. There's not a lot on Apple, but there's a couple shows that if you wanted to just subscribe for like a month and then watch some of the stuff that's good, I think it's worth that. They have some of the best shows. They just don't have very many of them. So the final tally for the streaming services here for the top 10 is 1 from Disney Plus, 1 from Crunchyroll, 1 from Paramount, 2 from HBO Max, 2 from Netflix, and 3 from Apple. I guess that kind of proves my point on Apple, I guess, a little bit. But regardless, those are my top TV shows of 2024. Again, this list would change once I go back and see some of the other things that I haven't watched. But as of right now, that's where I'm at with my rankings. I just kind of wanted to share with you guys, some of that, maybe bring some attention, some TV shows maybe you haven't heard of. As I said at the beginning of the video, comment and let me know what other TV shows you guys saw this year that I didn't talk about here, because I'm always on the lookout for good TV shows. TV shows take a lot more time to watch, but I do watch more TV shows than movies. At least I did this year. But with all that said, I just want to thank everybody for sticking around this video. Thank you for another great year here on the channel. And thank you, subscribers. All of you are awesome. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Do all the YouTube stuff or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm Geekshu64, and I'll always tell you the truth.